as these new mutations and variants are detected, the question that's on everyone's mind is whether the vaccines will work and for how long will the vaccines give us protection. Well, Dr. Saad Omar, the director of the Yale Institute of Global Health, joins us, and we asked him some very critical questions about vaccines and whether they'll work. Dr. Omar, will the vaccine work against this new Delta Plus variant, and God knows how many more variants they may be in the future? And how will we know if our vaccines are working against new emerging variants?
So there are a few ways of looking at vaccine effectiveness and whether the vaccines that are available work against these emerging variants. First is an immunological evaluation. So look at the immune response, the neutralizing antibodies, etc. And try to gauge, compared to other variants, how are these vaccines performing. The second one, which is a more short way of looking at it, is field effectiveness, meaning people who are getting the vaccines versus who are not getting the vaccines, how many of them are getting sick with this virus, and to what extent, severe versus non-severe. So right now, the data suggests that a lot of the vaccines that are out there are holding up against the new variants. For example, the UK posted some really interesting data last night, their time, and they suggest that the AstraZeneca vaccine, not just Pfizer vaccine, seems to be holding up against the Delta variant.
Yes.
The big picture worry is that so far, a lot of these vaccines, not every vaccine has been evaluated against the variants. A lot of these vaccines are being, useful and are holding up against these variants.
Right.
We are concerned about the future. If this fire continues to burn, newer and newer variants continue to emerge,
yes,
there may be a time where there's a chink in our armor.
But that's the question. How will we know when vaccines need to be tweaked or when we need booster shots to respond to new variants?
I think, time will tell. So I think there'll be a few months before that decision is made, at least a few months before this decision is made. And from my perspective, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. The likelihood of a booster or a an additional dose to combat these variants is there and has increased, but it's not a foregone conclusion. So from my perspective, right now, the most reasonable, rational strategy is to vaccinate as many people as possible,
right,
with the current vaccines, and as quickly as possible, so that the probability of these newer variants emerging goes down substantially.
All right. So you're saying we need to essentially stop the chain of transmission. But the other big headline for us here in India is now more doubts about the Covishield dosing gap. 12 to 16 week gap is being questioned. Do you think, given the new data that's available, India needs a rethink?
No, I think 12 to 16 week, given the consideration of some of the other data that says that, for the AstraZeneca or the Serum Institute of India vaccine, essentially the same vaccine, you have a somewhat better efficacy and effectiveness with this kind of an ideal gap. So I think that is rational, and I think it's very rational to stay with that. But again, that gap gives you the ability to deploy the vaccine to more people, which is also good. But who gets these additional doses also matters. So if other people in the high-risk group are getting it, that is, again, in line with a drastic mortality prevention strategy.
Right.
But if you are using that to again sort of dilute the impact of these vaccines to the high-risk group, then that's a little bit problematic. So I think that the gap makes sense at this point, that you have between the doses. But who gets these vaccines first? Eventually, everyone should get it. But who gets it first at this point is important.
All right. So dosing gap, you're saying, is okay, but priority considerations need to be made. Thanks so much, Dr. Omar. Those are important questions that you've answered for us on a very important day. Thanks for joining us.